Have you ever dreamed about starting your own business? Have you thought about taking your favorite hobby and turning it into your career? We did, and that's how Scale Trains was born. Over 8 years ago, Trainmasters TV followed us on our journey. They captured everything from the fun and all the highs to the absolute lows, the challenges that we had to overcome. You know, if I hadn't lived this story, I wouldn't believe it. And they follow our journey from the very first concept of our first product, which was the Big Blow Turbine, all the way to the point when we unveiled our company. There's even trips to our factories so you can see the entire product development process. This video is fantastic. Of course, we're a little biased. So we invite you to sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage, grab some popcorn, and enjoy Scale Trains Big Dreams.
Yeah, if you go up a little further, but then don't go in till that's not there. Don't find a seamless express.
All right, let's get them both out, then we'll figure out which one's which.
Actually, Mike,
I'm Mike Hopkin. I'm the Vice President of Product Development for Scale Trains. Okay, so we just put a little piece. Let's do this for now. I'll deal with that later. We're here at Train Fest in Milwaukee. We're getting ready to unveil our new company to the world. Hey, buddy. Product and the Gil Bennett painting. Do we want to wait right to the wire to put those items up? This goes in the front, right? I don't know. How do I tell? I'm gonna be on the right. Does it really matter? There's a lot of commotion, and we're just very excited to be able to finally get to this point and be able to show them what we've been working on for the last 18 months. We'll put all the product up, and the stuff that's not supposed to be seen yet, we'll just block it with something. You know, put a piece of paper in front of it or something, or cover it with something just until the last minute, and we'll pull it off.
Yeah, this is number one. This is off the first run. Go ahead and set on that top right shelf, if you would, please. Which one's that for? This one? My name is Shane Wilson, and I'm the president of ScaleTrains.com. We got another tender for you. Today's a really special day. We've worked so hard to get here. We've come so far, you know, from a dream a couple of years ago to leaving a really financially secure job and taking that leap of faith. As we've gone through the last 18 months, there's been times we've stood at the edge of the cliff and looked over and said, man, this thing's just gonna fall apart. There's no way we can do this. After all that time and a lot of challenges, and you know, here we are, and it's time to show everybody what we've done. Yeah, we're gonna open up at 9:10, so I have no idea.
I was looking all over for you.
Yeah, I've been. No, this is certainly not my first rodeo. You know, I've been in the model railroad industry for over 30 years and attended hundreds of train shows, but this is the first one where I've had the opportunity to be in the driver's seat. We finally have all the product. It's all out on the shelves, the display's up. We're about ready to share what we've accomplished with the folks here at Train Fest.
put it in the center. I ask the questions that I ask because I want to make sure your vision is met. Okay?
You're there, buddy.
Thank you.
I mean it.
Hey.
But to really understand what we've been through, we really have to go back to the beginning.
Same thing on the drawing.
You do. Scale Trains is a group of us that, four of us that started this company. We decided that it was time for us to achieve our goal and our dream of having our own company, being able to kind of be in control of our own destiny. We're going to be introducing the Big Blow Turbine as our first major project for the company. And so we're together today reviewing where we stand at the moment.
What do we pull together? What are we learning? And how does that compare to some of the things we want to do? We've talked about with the brands we want to create.
The reason we picked the Big Blow turbine was because it was really the pinnacle of UP's turbine experiments. They had several other versions that they had manufactured before the Big Blow. UP was a company that always seemed to want the biggest, the most powerful that they could get their hands on. We really felt like this was a project that we could bring to market that would really be a great benchmark for our company to start with.
All right.
So this is it. 20 inches wide, 12 feet long, or something like that.
Pretty impressive, huh?
You didn't have anything bigger?
The plan we're looking at is a GOD. That's a general overall dimensional drawing. And that's something that GE would have used for the basic construction. It gives all of the major dimensions, and it's a great place to start. If you've actually got to go out and measure a real locomotive or a freight car, if you're looking at something that's 40, 50, 60 feet long, it's awfully hard to pull a tape measure out that far and keep it tight and straight and get an accurate measurement. So those drawings are really a great help to get the major dimensions. It's great for the factory and the engineering team to be able to lay out the basic footprint for this model.
Turbine tenders got swapped around, so you had variations there. And even the A and the B units, even those got swapped around occasionally. When an A unit got swapped, it would be renumbered to match the B unit it was now mated to. And so that way you get mismatches between the dynamic brake equipment, which is another detail that changed between the two orders that they got. I am Executive Product Development Manager. That involves doing the research, whether it means like research can be books, magazines, photographs, actual field research, measurements. Some people consider me a rivet counter because I really like to focus on the fine details of different locomotives and freight cars, and I just try to bring that knowledge and that passion and desire of accuracy to our endeavor here with Scale Trains. Just doing basic research through the books and doing other photos, it looks like things like fuel tanks change with the control units. Like on a good number of the units, they added an extra capacity fuel tank.
What we found is that there's a lot of variation. They only had 30 of them, but in each of those there was a lot of mixing and matching that went on. There were two styles of tenders. Both the A units and the B units had a lot of variations that were done to them in their short lives. We've got to pull together some kind of a matrix that's going to tell us what the variations are and what tooling is going to be related to this.
A matrix is basically an Excel spreadsheet that I put together with multiple columns and rows covering all the basic differences between the different locomotives in that group. A row will cover, a block of units, and like, okay, here's the first order units numbered 1 through 15 or so forth. And then the different columns would highlight different details, like this unit was equipped with this style of radiator, this unit was equipped with this type of tender when it was built. We use that for both production to help make sure that the factory gets the details correct, and as well as for artwork to help the artist understand, okay, this road number that he's doing, this should have this type of horn, or this horn should be in this location, or it should have this type of radiator, and so on and so forth. I'm thinking, based on what I've put together so far, from the books and other reference information, possibly by the end of this week, in these few days, I may be able to have it put together, at least a basic spreadsheet covering the major differences between all the units and all the little details we're going to have to worry about trying to cover.
All right, so if we do that, here's what I'm thinking.
We basically put together a specification package for the engineering team over in China, the variations that we're going to want to build. Then the engineering team starts and they'll work on the first original drawings. Obviously the tooling for projects like these is very expensive. And so we're looking for as many road names and paint schemes and variations that we can use that tooling for. Typically those of us on development are looking at it from the standpoint of what is the most easy project to research? What do we have information on? Where can we most easily and most readily obtain the information required? The marketing guys don't always see it that way, and so there's usually some back and forth about that because they're looking at it from the standpoint of what's got the highest demand from the consumer.
Because we're going to need to...
What we're doing with the turbine is, again, this is being our first major project. We're really trying to set a benchmark for the brand. We're going to be introducing it at 2 different levels. We're going to be having our rivet counter model, which will be a high level of detail, but we're also going to be taking it to another level called our museum quality products. And so we're really trying to achieve the level of detail that hasn't been seen in the plastic model market. We got no idea what's going on between the two units really very well. I mean, there's a few photos, but nothing really great. There's not very many overhead shots. I mean, again, most of it's just roster stuff. Roster shots are great, but most rail fans or enthusiasts that are out trackside taking pictures don't take the kind of pictures that a manufacturer needs to be able to build a model. And so what we've found is that we've actually got to get out there and document it, measure it whenever possible. Okay. We've got to have that kind of detail.
I'll go to Union since it's closer to me.
Yeah.
And why don't Paul and you, Mike, why don't you guys go to Ogden?
Okay. Well, so once you get the contact information, let us know and we'll set up a... So it looks like we're going to have to send Shane to the Illinois Railroad Museum, where one of the last 2 turbines are in existence. Also, Paul and I are going to go to Ogden to see the other remaining turbine and get field measurements of that. People in this hobby are very serious about it. They're serious about the level of detail. They're serious about the accuracy. If you follow the forums, if you're on the internet at all looking at this kind of stuff, a lot of these guys are pretty unmerciful. And because the turbine is such a unique model, we've taken on a big responsibility in our minds by being the company that's going to tackle this project. It's a huge undertaking, and if we don't do it correctly, we're going to hear about it.
The Illinois Railroad Museum is only one of 2 museums who actually have real life examples of the turbine. And so we're going to go and we're going to take measurements of the locomotive. Hopefully everywhere we'll be able to get inside the cab and up on the roof and inside the turbine unit itself, because we want to make sure that we document everything about the locomotive. That way we know it's dimensionally accurate, that it's historically accurate. The weather outside is beautiful, the sun's shining, it's going to be great for pictures.
Well, I've always wanted to come here since I was a little kid. I grew up not far, and it's way beyond what I ever dreamed it would be. The amount of locomotives and freight cars and interurbans and trolleys, unbelievable. When I arrived in Chicago, it was beautiful and sunny, but now the clouds have come in. Hopefully the rain's going to hold off so we can get all of our pictures in. I'm looking forward to meeting Buzz Morissette. He's the one that takes care of the turbine here at IRM. You must be Buzz. He's got a ton of knowledge about its history, and he's going to help us take great photographs both inside and outside the locomotive. We are so excited to be able to finally see the real turbine. And I got to tell you, it is amazing how big it is.
Yep, it's big, and up until a few years ago, pretty rusty.
So you take care of the turbine, correct?
Yeah, I'm kind of its volunteer caretaker. I've been tinkering away at painting it for the last 12 years or so.
Wow, I can't believe how big the turbine is. It is huge and it's super long. It's going to be a big project for us to tackle.
Union Pacific was always after a lot of power. They were also interested in replacing the last of their steam engines. The big blows were different from the other turbine locomotives in the fact that they had not only more horsepower, but they also had a separate fuel tender. They had found out they had traction problems with the earlier locomotives. As they ran out of fuel, they got lighter, they lost traction. So the answer was to have a separate fuel tender. The different components of the super turbines was a control unit, which had the cab controls. They had a small 6-cylinder Cooper Bessemer engine, and that ran all of the auxiliaries. They had air compressors, a small generator so that they could hustle the engine under its own power. Then the prime mover was in the B unit, the turbine engine, the generators, and the control equipment for that. The controls were designed to be similar to that of the diesel. They had more notches on the throttle, of course, but the startup sequence was pretty much automatic. I believe they just pressed a button to start it up. There was a sequencer that started the turbine and went through everything to start and stop.
Are we able to get up on top as well?
Oh yeah, there's lots of grab irons on the sides. You can get up there. Again, be careful, there's some wires up there.
As I look closely at the turbine, the size is huge, but boy, the detail is amazing too, especially up underneath the underframe and above the trucks and around the fuel tank. There's a lot of parts that we're going to need to create to make this model look as real as we can. Well, the plan is to do etched metal louvers so that they're really fine and you can see through. And I noticed there's a lot of detail, it looks like, with some bracing on the inside of the louvers.
Yeah, and that's all still original. There's never been anything modified for that. We've got some covers over the radiator on top to keep the rain out, but
Okay.
you guys probably find historical pictures of the bare grids on the radiators.
I think we're going to have to challenge ourselves to really step up our game on this model.
There we go.
We're going to have to come up with some details that have never been done before. You know, as I look at the B unit, I think we need to challenge our team to make it so the doors open and we can look inside and see the real turbine and the generators.
Technical article I read, one of the engineers involved, said that UP specified 7,000 horsepower at the drawbar, but because of transmission losses and altitude losses and everything else, they actually designed for 12,500 horsepower here. And he said on a cold day at sea level, this thing might actually make 13.5.
As I walk around this locomotive, I'm really awed by its sheer size and the amount of detail. Things like all the cables and the water hoses between the A and the B unit. Looking at the trucks, they have the hangers with re-rail brackets. Well, can you imagine having to try and re-rail that truck? Or if all of them were off at one time? You know, walking around the locomotive, I see things like all the roof detail, dynamic brakes, the intakes for all of the air that this locomotive sucked in. It's going to be a real challenge to take this to a level that we've never seen before on a locomotive in the North American market.
But if you want to get in to see the exhaust pipe and whatnot, we can go up right here
Yeah.
onto the tender.
Yeah, let's take a look. The view up here is amazing.
Yes.
Looking down inside the exhaust tube, it is massive. I can't imagine what it must have been like when this was operating. Wow.
And they angled them up at a 45-degree angle. The first units, I'm sure you've read about, had an exhaust pipe that came straight up in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
When they get into a tunnel, it would exhaust in both directions and get enough exhaust in front of the unit to choke it out. They would stall. They were worried about stalling them in tunnels. So they angled them this way. As long as they could keep about a 10 to 20 mile an hour speed through a tunnel, it was enough fresh air to keep the thing going.
Wow. This is one of those special features of the turbine. We're going to have to figure out a way we can make the turbine blades spin just like the real locomotive.
There's no residue oil or anything in here. It's pretty clean. But you can see the heating elements down there.
Oh, well, look at that. So as we look at the A and the B and the tender here, the tender was actually not the original tender for number 18. And we've done some research prior to our visit, and we've learned that oftentimes, even though the A and the B and the tender were shipped together from the factory, many times they would be separated and used with other locomotives.
18 there, you can see underneath there's a 2 and a 1 on the left and an outline of a 7 on the right. So it was either 27 or 17 when it was rebuilt for turbine service.
So we're going to have to do our homework and make sure that the A, the B, and the tender are right for the photos we're working from. It wasn't uncommon to have an A that was different from its original B and different from its tender.
I remember reading that somebody had gone to Cheyenne to snoop around when these were neared retirement, and they found 2 units, 28.
Really? What I'm looking at in the back, that's the turbine itself, correct?
That is the reduction gear.
Reduction gear, okay.
There was a high-speed shaft that came in the middle from the turbine, and then 2 lower-speed shafts on either side that drove 2 each of the generators. The difficulty with this was, A, the cooling water had for the reduction gear and other stuff had to come to from the central cooling unit on that side in the A unit.
Okay.
And then all the power had to come from the B unit back to the traction motors in front. So there was a huge pile of wires and pipes that went between the A and the B unit.
What did you just imagine what it must have felt like to stand in here when this thing was running?
The engineering report that I read also said the guy, when they were working on the changeover gear, to get the speed up above 30 or 40 miles an hour, they switched the generators rather than the traction motors around. They took 2 generators in parallel at lower speed, and then switched to 2 generators in series at higher speeds. That guy said he was standing in here when next to the switch when it changed over, and there was so much magnetic induction from these heavy wires that the coins in his pocket ripped out of his pocket from the magnetic induction that happened with that changeover.
This thing is massive. I can't imagine what it would have been like to be an engineer standing here, listening to the turbine and feeling it underneath my feet.
Auxiliary power, Cooper Bessemer 6-cylinder, I believe 850 horsepower. And when it arrived at the museum, we were still able to crank it over, but it wouldn't run, of course. I don't think they even attempted to start it, but we've worked at keeping the stack closed up. We're pretty sure that with enough work, this could be restored to running condition, which would be enough to pull itself around and maybe a couple of cars if they ever decided to do that, but I don't think that'll happen.
One of the neat things about the turbine is the fact that it has different sounds. The A unit has a traditional diesel engine inside, so we're going to have to figure out how to make that sound come out of the A. And then with the B unit, it's got a roaring jet engine sound, and it was either off or it was on. It's screaming top speed, so we're going to have to make sure we get that sound out of the B. Looking at the A unit, it has some really large grills at the back of the locomotive, and it's one of the main spotting features. So we're going to have to make sure those are see-through, so we'll probably need to do those in etched metal. And that way you can see behind the grills, you can actually see the cross members inside, as well as some of the grating for the fan. And that would be a great place to hide a speaker and get all of the sound out of the A unit.
The lines are much different. There was the door.
One of the things we're really going to have to get right is the nose. And from past experience, we know that the compound contours of a locomotive like this are really hard to do. So we're going to have to work with our engineering team to make sure we get that detail right. You've got the car body, and the lower part matches the car body, but up here,
the cab gets a little
with the
wider.
cab, yeah, it actually flares out.
The unit as built was at a time when GE and Alco had a close relationship. And we've noticed a similarity between just the cab portion and the Alcos. And we think that some of the windows, which might be why we have a lot of extra window parts inside, I think the guys that they were going through the scrapping area were picking up a lot of cab parts because we've got a couple of Alcos here that I think they wanted to put windows in.
Really?
Today I'm going to take a lot of measurements of the locomotive and a lot of photographs. So I'm going to use a rule that's marked off every other inch to make sure that the dimensions are accurate. I expect to take upwards of a couple thousand pictures today. And that way we make sure that we're able to get every detail both on the outside of the locomotive as well as on the inside. Oh no. I had this great idea that I was going to apply magnets to the back of the folding ruler and it would just stick on the side of the locomotive. Well, I guess we need to add some more magnets. Well, it works great when it's vertical, but when I put it horizontal, it just falls off. All right, let's see if this works better. I thought it would have stuck better than that.
The turbine that we have will probably never run here. There's been some thought about how to do it, but what we do with our turbine isn't so much restoration as it is preservation. we decided to keep a coat of paint on it, keep it for rusting, try to keep the water out of it, and keep it for display.
The turbine is a draw for the museum. I think it's another piece in the collection that makes it a more complete display of the advances in technology and the different thoughts about which way technology should go. While they're kind of orphans in a way, because diesels really were the things that caught on, they still were innovative for their time.
As a manufacturer, one of the biggest challenges for us is finding the right research materials. One of those things is gaining access to the real equipment. And we know that as time goes by, the equipment deteriorates. And we want to make sure that we give back. So one of the hallmarks of our company is to give back to railroad museums, model railroad clubs, model railroad museums, to help them preserve our favorite hobby. For here at Illinois Railway Museum in Union and the Utah State Museum in Ogden, Utah, we're donating $50 for every sale of their particular road number. And for the first production run, we plan to donate nearly $20,000 combined to both organizations.
It'll be a wonderful thing to get enough money to have it properly sandblasted and repainted with higher quality paint. We feel it ought to be parked outside. To take pictures of something that big, it's the only way to see it. And better paint is the only way to store it outside.
I'm so glad we came to the Illinois Railway Museum. It was such a huge help. I learned so much about the turbine, its history from buzz, all the detail we need to create, and all the special things we can do. I can see our team's going to have a pretty big challenge creating this model. We're going to have to balance all of this detail and the sound and the lighting with the budget and figure out how much can we really spend and what are our customers willing to spend on the model. We're definitely going to break new ground on the price point, but I'm sure with all our effort, it's definitely going to be worth it. And thank goodness it didn't rain while we were here.
So Shane's trip to IRM was excellent. It brought back a lot of good information, some areas that we had some questions about we were able to confirm. We took that information, combined it with everything else that we had, and went ahead and sent that over to China, to the engineering team. They have since sent us back the drawings.
Okay, let's take a look at the side frames.
Yeah, okay.
Spring detail looks good. I like that. That's well defined. I think that's going to be okay.
We've been able to look at the drawings now for a couple of days, and we think that we've got everything resolved that we need to resolve. There's only a couple of minor issues that we're still checking on. Once we get that wrapped up, we'll be able to send the drawings back to them and give them approval to go ahead and start the tooling.
What about the fuel tank and the battery boxes?
We're going to be looking for accuracy. We're going to be looking for fidelity of the details. Make sure that things are sharp and they're clean. Obviously, dimensionally, we're going to want to review them to make sure that everything matches the prototype information.
You know, obviously the pictures of 18, it's got the II configuration.
Yeah, and this is HI.
And this is an HI, but the grill detail looks good. I like the etchings look really nice.
Yeah, I like how those came out.
Those should be good.
On the A unit, some of the things that we wanted to make sure were done correctly, because there's a lot of detail going on there, was the grills on the side of the A unit. They're photo etched parts. They're see-through. You can see inside the A unit. You'll be able to see the bracing in behind the grill, and you'll actually be able to see the radiator fan assembly in there.
Well, that last issue then we talked about earlier was the number boards. Well, let's go back and take a look at that again.
Yeah.
One other issue that we're still debating on is the number board placement and some of the nose detail.
Yeah, I don't know. Some just looks off. I just can't put my finger on it, but some just doesn't look quite right.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm seeing it, but I think what we got to do is we need to press on with the deadlines we've got. Let's move it. Let's have them go ahead and get started on the tooling. Yeah. Let's get some samples in hand, and then we can take a look at it again. If we need to make an adjustment, we can. That's not ideal, but
we're going to go ahead and give them approval on that so that they can move forward, and then we'll have to take a look at that further when we get the first shots back. There were several things that Shane wanted us to do in the way of animation or function. A couple of them were the exhaust fan blades, that we wanted those to actually operate on our high-end model. And then also on the B unit, the side doors will actually slide to be able, so that you're going to be able to see some of the interior detail on the B unit. I think we're good to go with the B unit.
I think so.
I'm happy with what we're seeing here. So.
Yeah, no, I can.
Even with as good as the 3D renderings are, until you actually have hard parts in your hand, some of the details are a little hard to fully understand what it's going to wind up looking like. But again, we're real confident that the drawings are good, and so we're anxious to see the first shot samples so that we can figure out where everything lands.
All right, I'll send out some emails and we'll see if we can get them rolling.
Okay. Scale Trains is a group of us that started this company. We decided that it was time for us to achieve our goal and our dream of having our own company, being able to kind of be in control of our own destiny.
But to really understand what we've been through, we really have to go back to the beginning.
We're going to be introducing the Big Blow turbine as our first major project for the company. There's not very many overhead shots. I mean, again, most of it's just roster stuff.
Wow, I can't believe how big the turbine is. It is huge and it's super long. It's going to be a big project for us to tackle. Are we able to get up on top as well?
Oh yeah, there's lots of grab irons on the sides. You can get up there.
I can see our team's going to have a pretty big challenge creating this model, but I'm sure with all our effort, it's definitely going to be worth it. Well, after 3 airplane rides and 24 hours of travel, we finally landed in Hong Kong. This morning we're off to mainland China, where we'll see the test shots from our first model, as well as some of the plastic parts, some of the metal parts, and get a progress update to make sure we're on track for Train Fest in Milwaukee.
Hi, can you open the gate for us? Oh, she's going to town. Thank you. So here we are at the factory. We've basically got 2 complexes, one on each side, and then out in the back is the dormitory area. The majority of the workers, they live in the dormitories, and they come here, they live here, and then a lot of them will go home during Chinese New Year, and it's not uncommon to have 30 to 40% of the workforce not return after Chinese New Year. So basically every year you're having to retrain 30 to 40% of your labor force as part of the routine, and this is not uncommon for a lot of factories here in China. All right, so here we are. Engineering office, 5th floor. This is the reception area. We're going to have our logo up here once we get that done. That's coming shortly. Really? Yep. So let's head inside and we'll take a look at what everybody's working on. Once we've collected all the prototype information that we can come up with, we send it to the design team over here in China, and they're the ones that actually do all the engineering. They do the design, looking at the accuracy of the prototype, and also it's got to function. The drivetrain, the mechanism, motors, those kind of components have to be laid out in the design as well. We're primarily focused on the details, the exterior of the model. We give them that information, but basically the drivetrain, the mechanism part, is all something that they work on, and they've got to be concerned about tolerances, about noise levels, things like universal joints, gears and such. We do give them some product specifications, example minimum radiuses. They need to know what coupler heights are, National Model Railroad Association specifications for locomotive weights, things like that. They've got to factor all those kind of issues in as they're designing it. After we get done with the engineering, we've actually got to start cutting tooling steel. To do that, there's a couple of different processes involved. The first process is to use a CNC machine to cut the copper electrodes that'll be used in the EDM process. EDM is basically a process where you pass an electrical current through the copper electrode, and it'll actually burn the detail into the tool steel, and that's what creates the cavities in the tooling. What I've got here in my hand is an example of one of those electrodes. This is cut on a CNC machine, and this is a truck side frame for one of the tenders for the turbine. As I look out here, there's bins and bins of electrodes. Some of them are recognizable details, others are not, but the amount that you see here is about 2/3 of what were actually required for the process. And when everything was said and done, there was about 7,000 electrodes that were required for this process. Once the inserts are made, those have all got to be fitted into the mold base, which takes some time. And there's a fitting process that's used to assemble that tool before they actually put it into the press to start to do the initial test shots. They're going to load the tool into the machine. They're going to fill the hopper with plastic. There's many adjustments that can be adjusted on an injection molding machine. Temperatures, pressure, cycle times, which meaning how long the tool stays closed, how much time it takes to push the plastic into the tool. So all of that has to be adjusted and fine-tuned before they can finalize the tool. So they're going to run some parts, they're going to examine the parts, they're going to be looking for things like short shots, meaning the part didn't completely fill. They're going to be looking for things like cold joints, where the material didn't properly bond. If it's filled from two different ends and the material still isn't hot enough or soft enough to bond properly, you can have a cold joint and the part will still break. And so that's all part of the debugging process of the tool. So the tool could be loaded into the machine numerous times as it goes between the tool shop and the actual test shot process till they can say that the tool is ready for production. The raw parts are sent over to a department where they're going to de-sprue all the parts, meaning they're going to remove the parts from the runners. The runners are the parts that basically get recycled. They can build numerous sub-assemblies before they go to painting. A lot of the parts have to be painted individually. Depending on where the parts are going to be will determine whether or not they're assembled now or assembled later. Also, a lot of holes are drilled by hand. There's a core pin that is placed in the tool to start the hole, but they have to be drilled completely by hand all the way through to install the wire form grab irons. You know, they've got it set up for the H with the core pins for the wider spacing. That looks good. I love the radiator grill detail underneath here. Certainly with all the various details that we're trying to capture in these models, there's always the opportunity to miss something, and so every step of the way we need to really be thorough and back check everything to make sure that all that's been done. Once those first shots are approved, then they can start the production, and then they'll start into the deco sample process.
When we were at the Illinois Railway Museum, one of the concerns that we talked about was the shape of the nose and how important it was to get it right. Unfortunately, when we received the first shots of tooling, the nose actually slanted down towards the front and the sand fillers were located too far out from the body. So we asked the engineers in China to go back and make some changes. And so before we cut any more tooling, we asked them to create a 3D rendering in aluminum, and they cast this nose for us. And what's really nice is we can now see that the sand filler area is moved out to the edge of the nose and it's more flat and then starts to taper off around the headlight.
One of the benefits that we've found over the years of traveling over here is that, again, email's great, video conferencing is good as well, but there's nothing like face-to-face. Yes. Yep, and we want two back here also. Yes. You're able to sit down around a table, hold parts in your hand, look at a drawing together and point at things and be able to give examples of why something doesn't look the way it should or why it isn't functioning the way it is. A little bit. It can be a challenge. Obviously, we're dealing with people that English is their second language. They do a great job, but it's still a challenge. So different. Okay? We can make a lot more progress in a week in China than typically a few weeks just by trading emails back and forth. Much better. Yes. Perfect. That looks good.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Shane.
Great
how
to
are
see you, buddy.
Yeah, it's good seeing you.
Matt from Lokesound is going to be visiting today. And the great thing is we get to see the new version of the turbine and get to hear the sound that's been enhanced. Hey, we got power, so let's go play some trains.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thanks.
buddy. The last version of the sound I heard was pretty disappointing. It sounded like a jet engine, but it just didn't have that loud, overwhelming sound. I'm really hoping this new sound has that ear-piercing jet scream to it that we all expect.
This one's actually even a little more complicated than most because the turbine is something that hasn't run in many years. So any audio that we find is usually very poor analog audio, different YouTube videos, different Green Frog videos, different Pentrex videos. It's difficult because a lot of the audio just isn't accurate necessarily, and you have really no way of knowing where that audio came from. So it's been a challenge. The first sound that we created, I wasn't happy with it, but I didn't know what else we could do at the time. So we kind of put it out there to see what Shane's thoughts and Mike's thoughts were on it, and they were kind of in agreement with me. It just wasn't quite right. So we went back and we kind of regrouped, and we found some different audio to be able to use, and now it's there. One of the things that we noticed was that because this was a sample, it didn't have all the lights working in it. Sure. They're there in the programming, but you know, we'll have to kind of show you that once we get a little better sample on it, and once they get a little farther along. So, okay. But I can show you some of the lights. We've got it set up so that we have like a nighttime mode, because the step lights and the rear light you probably wouldn't normally see during the day, so those are on a separate function button with a nighttime mode. Okay. Those will actually work off F5 here. And
we've really focused on trying to bring some unique animation to the locomotive. One of the things is the engineer climbs into the cab, turns on the dome light, then you see the number boards and the headlight come on, then the class lights, and then the dome light goes out. It's like he's actually inside the cab.
And then once he's ready to go, the engine started, the cab light will actually turn off. So
awesome.
A little bit of automation built into that.
Exactly what we wanted.
Yeah. So first thing we'll do, we'll just hear the Hostler motor start up, and that's in the A unit, of course.
Okay. And what are we hearing right now? That's the primary.
Okay, this is the Hostler motor out of the A unit. So this, you know, as you know, this would kind of just be used to shuffle around the yard or whatever. So.
When we were at the Illinois Railroad Museum, one of the things that we talked about was having to make sure that the A unit sounded different than the B unit.
Then we'll press F3, and that's going to turn your turbine on. Along with the turbine, it's also going to turn the fan blade on in the museum quality engines. So there is a complication with the Hostler mode in the A and the turbine in the B. And in order to be able to know when one is working and when the other is working, because they're two different decoders, so they can't directly communicate with each other. So what we've had to do is incorporate the turbine sounds into the A unit, even though you're not hearing it into the A. They're just being played silently, so that when the turbine's kicked in, the Hostler mode isn't going up and down, revving up and down. So we had to do a little bit of thinking in order to try to figure out just how to accomplish what's really happening in the prototype.
Much better.
Yeah.
With the turbine, of course, the really unique thing is the turbine engine. And Matt's really tweaked it well this time. It's got a startup sound that really has a jet roar to it. It's almost obnoxious. It's so loud when it starts up. And then the sound tends to level out, right?
Yeah, it kind of levels down. You get rid of the high ear piercing, but...
And just like the real turbine, it's either at idle or it's at full speed.
Right, right.
One of the things we did is we incorporated a flange squeal. The other thing you hear is a frog clank sound. So when it goes over the frog, you'll hear that clank like the wheel is dropped into the frog.
Now you're hearing that squeal.
And then we go through the frog.
Yeah, we should hear, especially on the B unit, we're having a little sensor issue with the first one.
And then on shutdown, it's got that same ear-splitting sound to it. I think we've got it just right.
We'll have to kind of show you that once
we think we've come up with some outstanding sounds, some lighting and animation. Without Matt, this wouldn't have been possible.
Right, so that way we're not using up all those function buttons, because we know it's kind of hard to have everybody have a throttle that has 47 function buttons. So try to put everything right.
Even though we've got quite a few experts on our team, we don't know everything. So we really do have to rely on a lot of experts, and there's many people outside of our core team that we work with who actually know what's going on.
Because of the way the fan is shaped, it doesn't have to be going at full bore, so we were able just to kind of lower the speed on it a little bit, and then it died.
We really want the turbine to be a surprise when we get to TrainFest. So we got to keep it under wraps for the whole 18 months of development. We know with someone like Matt, who works with a lot of other manufacturers and researchers, that we can trust him to keep a secret.
One of the things I have to think about with kind of keeping the secrets of all the different companies is their trust in me. You know, I've been kind of put on the spot to be the master of all those secrets, and it's a challenge because I know what everybody is doing. A pretty good package, I think.
Awesome. You know, we work with a lot of different people. We work with our factory, our engineering team, researchers, people within our industry, even other manufacturers. You've been a lifesaver through the whole process on the sound side, and we really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
You know, we have really good relationships, and I trust the folks that we work with. I'm not real worried about secrets getting out.
Oh, man. Morning, gentlemen. How's it going, buddy? Good to see you this morning. Mr. Paul?
Shane came to us this morning and told us that there's some problems with the turbine samples.
Guys, I hate to tell you this. I got a Skype message from the factory this morning and wanted to know when we were leaving for China, and I said, you know, we're leaving tomorrow. And I said, do we need to talk before we go? And my Skype rang right away.
Okay.
The body shells for the Union turbine, the Union, Illinois turbine, and the one in Ogden, Utah were molded wrong. And unfortunately, all the grab irons on the Pilot are in the wrong place. Well, they're not there. They molded the wrong body shell.
What appears to have happened is that the factory used the wrong bodies to make the samples for the A units that we needed for the big show in Milwaukee in a couple of weeks.
And they've already molded, painted, decorated, and started assembly. All right.
The models are going to be available in a couple different versions. The as-delivered versions didn't have some grab irons that went up the side of the nose on the A unit. The later versions did. The majority of the models that we're producing in the first production run are supposed to have these grab irons on the side of the nose. The sample bodies that they molded to do the deco samples for us didn't have those details.
I'm not really sure exactly how this could have happened. We know that the artwork was correct when we submitted it to the factory. My best guess is that they looked at one of the numbers and just molded all of the same body.
So that means that those are incorrect. And then a couple of minutes later, I got another Skype message after we got off the phone, and come to find out all of the body shells for the first and second run are wrong, except for one road number.
So obviously a big problem. This affects marketing, this affects our advertising, this has a major impact on what modelers are going to see when we display the product.
It's going to take some time to mold new bodies. They're probably going to have to mold more parts because there's a lot of separate details, and I'm sure they don't have extras. They're also going to have to work with the suppliers who do all the etched metal. Then we have all the painting that has to be done, the masking and the printing. All the parts have to be applied. There's probably not enough time to get all that done.
Our project manager made it sound like it's almost impossible for us to even have them air freighted in time to get them at the show.
We're going to call the factory, and that way we can have a face-to-face conversation, so to speak. The team's going to join me, and hopefully we can come up with a solution along with our project manager that will work for the factory as well as for us.
Hi.
How are you, sir?
Yes, I'm fine.
So we've been talking and wanted to get a few comments from you and see what we can figure out. If we remold everything and and have it decorated, is there any chance that we would have it if it was air freighted for TrainFest?
I think not possible because it needs to take 3 days to complete the spraying and 4 days to complete the printing. And the most important thing is that the assembly for the Photoshop is very complicated.
based from what we've seen so far, the amount of time that it's taken them to produce the first set of samples, for them to try to get us replacement samples in the time that we have left between now and the time for the show when we need to debut these, probably unlikely that they're going to be able to do that for us.
I think what we do is we go ahead and go with what we've got, and then we're gonna have to have them give us new decos, because all the photography's gonna be wrong, and everything on our website's gonna be wrong. And we're a web-based company. How can we?
Yeah.
We can't not.
We can't. Yeah, the product's gonna be right out of the gate. There's no.
I mean, even if they can move forward in getting the decos, and it's after the show, even if it's shortly after the show, at least we can have right pictures.
The best course of action at the moment, and we need to confirm this with the factory, is to have them supply us a partially decorated sample that would have the missing details on those samples. We'll have them also finish and complete the samples that they are working on that don't have all the accurate details, and we'll photograph both versions. And then through the computer graphics, we'll be able to blend all that together and create images that will represent what the final model will look like.
Do you have the samples there with you that Mike and Paul and Joe can take a look at? Can you hold them up? With today's technology, one of the great things is we can communicate with the factory face-to-face through things like Skype or FaceTime. One of the challenges through that, though, is we're exactly 12 hours difference from here to China.
If you send an email now, everybody over there is in bed.
Do you want me to shut the video off on my end?
You got to wait 12 hours. They wake up, they answer the email, and when they're answering, we're in bed. And so you lose a day pretty much with every exchange of email.
Okay, see you.
You want to call me back? I'll take that as a yes.
That looks like that's a yes.
Unfortunately, the internet in China is extremely unreliable. There we are. Now we can hear you.
Okay. Sure.
There's often times when the signal will cut out. It makes the person on the other end extremely difficult to understand. And I think it makes it hard for them to understand us as well. I think we're looking at 3 days, and it's got to go to the hotel.
And you got to get it through customs. You know, you're going to have to deal with that. So you having to mold something else doesn't seem like it's going to be an option.
Yeah, we just don't have enough time.
Quite frankly, this is pretty typical. It's just kind of par for the course. And certainly the first time with a new model, it wouldn't be nearly as big a deal if it wasn't, our first show, new company. I mean, if this was at another company where we had been working for years, it would just be, you take it in stride and you move on, which is what we're gonna have to do anyway. Bodies that are correct. 100% complete, fully assembled, fully decorated, and they have to be, we need replacements that are correct. Have to have them. Whatever it takes on your side, you guys are gonna have to do it.
That's good.
They are making progress. Based on what we're able to see, they're very close to being completed.
And they look, at least first blush.
Wow, the B units are looking fantastic. This is the first time we've really seen photographs of painted and decorated samples. The good news is the B units are right. Hopefully they'll have the tenders done soon, and I think when we get all that together, we can make it work.
Once you and I get there and we look at them, then we can make a decision based on that, but it's still a big question mark.
Even though the sample might not be exactly perfect, it's going to be close. And I hope that when people see the level of detail and how much effort we've gone to make the model as realistic as possible, they'll give us a little latitude here in the beginning, because the good news is we have time before production, and we'll make sure production is right.
Someone who's a very serious Union Pacific modeler will probably notice those things. We take a great deal of pride in what we do. We're enthusiast modelers as well. And so we're very concerned about the product being accurate. For us, there won't be anybody that will be more frustrated if the product doesn't live up to what we think it needs to be. Just got to keep pressing on.
That's what we do. All right, let's go have some breakfast. I'm hungry. Yeah. So now that this crisis is over, we're going to set up the trade show display for the first time. We're going to unbox it. It's going to be just like Christmas morning.
My name is Joel Vera II, and I am the Vice President of Marketing for ScaleTrains.com. That involves taking care of all the artwork for production models. That involves doing all the artwork for marketing, websites. Basically anything you see our name on, I've probably had a hand in making. No. I mean, we might as well seek, because if we yank out the other... So tonight I was elected to be the supervisor for putting up the show booth. It was the first time we actually got to unbox the crate and get to the parts. As we unbox the boxes for the first time, we number each box and catalog with a photograph what was in the box to make sure that everything that we unbox goes back in the same way and we don't miss anything. The best reason to do it now is because when we get to the show, we have so many responsibilities to get through that day that it's best to work out all the kinks as soon as possible to see what we need. For example, tonight, we found out that we're definitely going to need at least 2 step ladders and a level to make sure that the booth goes up correctly. We'll pack it onto pallets, we'll wrap it up, and the truck will come by and pick it up and haul it to the show.
So we're on our way back to the factory again in Dongguan, China. Well, for a Southern California guy like me, it's pretty tough. I'm used to dry weather. Here it's a lot of humidity, so you end up sweating a whole bunch. The area of Dongguan is about the same size as Los Angeles or Chicago. There's about 45 million people, very industrial area, a lot of factories. Large companies like Sanyo, Maersk, Nestle have factories here doing various kinds of business. They draw a lot of workers from various parts of the country, and they wind up staying for some amount of time, earning money to be able to take back home to their villages. Most of the factories have dormitories and cafeterias that supply food and housing, and that is part of their salary. So the money that they earn is theirs basically, and they have no expenses. A lot of them choose to stick around and look for opportunities to advance in the companies and move up into a management position.
One of the first things we get to do today is visit our engineering office. They'll be placing the scaletrains.com sign in the lobby. So we thought the sign was going to be a decal, and it's actually plastic letters. It looks really neat. They're putting up the scaletrains.com logo as well as our slogan, Innovative Scale Trains.
This is 2 words, so there should be a space, but they've got the same.
One of the fortunate things about being here was the fact that they were going to actually have Innovative Scale Trains all jumbled together as one word. So we were able to get them to properly space the lettering. They don't have the space between the 2 letters. So they need to change the spacing so that the letters are spaced properly. You know, obviously with the language barrier, all they are shapes to them, and so we have to have them separate those to make that grammatically correct in English.
As we all know, Mike's an engineer, and everything has to be perfect.
Or a straight edge?
Unfortunately, the letters aren't straight, and it's driving Mike nuts.
Looks like a nursery rhyme. As a product developer, one of the things I've got to focus on as part of my job day in and day out is to make sure that things are straight and level. And as I see them putting these letters up, it's obvious that they're not straight.
One letter's crooked, it trails off, and of course Mike's got to fix it.
You just got to move the S to the left just a little bit. Perfect, right there. Yep, perfect.
The TM is okay.
Yep.
When I stand back, it still looks crooked to me.
Oh, the S is upside. The S is up. The back. The last S is upside down.
You know, as I sit back and I see these letters being put up and the signage going up, it's kind of a milestone. It's one more step in this process that creates some legitimacy to our new company. You know, as far as we know, we're the only company that has a factory in China that has our name on it. This actually wasn't a dream of mine. Never would have thought in a million years that something like this would have ever happened. The course that my life's taken to get to this point right now is nothing short of a miracle. Would have never envisioned being a part owner of a model train manufacturer. I always kind of assumed that I would be working for somebody else. While this has been really challenging and been a lot more than what I expected getting into it, I'm just excited to see what's next.
Hello. Good to see you. How are you? Good.
So now with the sign up, we've got bigger issues we need to move on to.
Working hard. Very good.
We've got deco sample bodies being made right now. These are replacement bodies for the turbines that they made the incorrect bodies for the first time around. And we also have the finished packaging going on for some of the other projects that should have been done earlier, but are coming right down to the wire for Train Fest. So now we're going to have an opportunity to tour the factory, find out what the status is in these things, and hopefully we're going to get it all done in time.
To me, at this point, if you want the samples by Saturday, it seems like I think we want to stay out of their way and let them finish those.
All right.
So the first process that we're going to look at is the sub-assembly process. These parts are all put on together at the same time because they're going to be painted the same color. This helps to ensure color match. If parts are painted even the same color at different times, there can be different shades to the color. So by assembling the parts, putting them together, and painting them at the same time, this helps to ensure there will be good color, consistent color throughout the process. If they're painting parts on a sprue, they'll lay them out on a tray, and then they can take them into the base coating booths and spray them.
Part of the process before painting, we've got to separate the metal parts from the plastic parts because they both use different kinds of paint. The plastic parts are still on the sprues, a lot of them, and they're placed on these trays. What they use is adhesive masking tape where they turn it upside down where the adhesive side is up, and then they're able to paint those on the tray. The metal parts, such as grab irons and railings, small parts like that, you can see the lady here in front who is meticulously placing these into a small block of foam with a little pair of tweezers to get them placed so that we can paint those parts as well. The metal parts are typically baked to help the paint adhere better to the metal. The plastic parts typically air dry.
Base coating is done in the larger paint booths. They use a water curtain method, catching all of the extra paint that's sprayed. They'll put them on a large tray and spray entire batches all at one time, or sometimes they will also spray them individually. The masking process is fairly complicated. First, they've got to make the masks. Those are done through a copper process where they actually have to form the mask over body parts once they've determined where the masking lines have to be. After the masks are made, then they still have to come back and fine-tune the mask with files to make sure that they're going to get a really sharp edge. The masks are held in the spray booth, and the operator then takes the body parts and presses them into the mask to spray them. One of the tricky parts about this is that in larger pieces, like bodies that are long, they have to actually paint them in several sections because they have to keep even pressure of the body up against the mask to ensure that there's going to be a good sharp paint break. The masks are cleaned every 20 or 30 masking operations to ensure that the paint edge stays nice and sharp around the masking area.
After the painting process, we move on to printing. We start with artwork that we generate back in our office. That artwork is then turned into a film positive, which is used to burn the printing plates. You can see those in the rear of the ink wells. The printing pad, which is made out of silicone, picks up the ink out of the etched areas where the graphics are at. That graphic is then held on the printing pad and brought out and placed on the body. The printing pad does not have any image on it whatsoever, it's just smooth. This machine, you can see, does 3 colors, and we're doing the 3 colors of the UP shield.
Once those are done, the operator then will take the body off of the mandrel and with a magnifying glass inspect the printing to make sure it's sharp, it's in register, and everything looks the way it's expected to look. As much as we would like to think that everything goes smoothly, there's always time when touch-up is going to be required. Masking lines may not always be straight, printing may not be always 100% clean, and so there's a lot of hand labor involved in the touch-up process, both on touch-up for the painting process and the printing process. Typically there will be workers with a brush go back in and touch up either the paint or the printing ink, depending on what the issue is, to try to get the best quality model possible. Once all the painting, printing is done, we move on to the final assembly. There's going to be a moving table through the center with workers on both sides that each have a specific responsibility to install a part, to check a part, to glue a part, and as the components move through the assembly line, once you get to the other end, you're going to have something that's completely assembled and ready for packing. The workers spend quite a bit of time inspecting each model individually to make sure that everything is straight. The assembly, the printing, the painting, making sure that everything is at the level that it needs to be. A lot of people may assume that this is unskilled labor, and it's really not. These people are trained in a specific operation. Typically they're cross-trained to do several different jobs, but a lot of these workers are probably as good as the average modeler, if not better, in their ability to use a paintbrush to drill holes at a lot of the typical operations that most enthusiasts, most hobbyists would use. There's a lot of hand operation with almost every process. Very little automation is used to build these products. The last step is going to be QC. During the QC process, we're going to inspect the model one last time visually to make sure that everything is properly assembled, and then they also have to test the function. They're going to run the locomotives both directions through an oval track to make sure that it functions properly. Also, they're going to be looking for lighting to make sure that the lighting works correctly, and if equipped, they'll be checking the sound function as well to make sure that the locomotives work properly. And then after that, it's ready to go in the box. So along with the turbine, which is obviously our biggest project, we've also got some other things coming through the factory right now as well. We're working on our first boxcar kit in our Kit Classic line, and that's the one that they're trying to wrap up right now as we speak. This has been dragging on probably longer than it should. We've had numerous problems with something that should actually have been relatively simple to get done.
We started on this project over a year ago when we submitted the research package to our engineering team. Just this week, we got to see the first samples of the boxcar for production, and unfortunately there were some big problems to overcome. One of those was the fact that our couplers were falling apart. So there was some quick re-engineering of our coupler, made some last-minute changes to the tooling, and thankfully we were able to get that fixed. So these boxcars are actually being packaged today. They're going to be air freighted to the US. They'll leave for Hong Kong tonight, and hopefully they'll be in the US by a week from today. We spent a lot of time on the packaging, making sure the colors were right. We picked red, and one of the interesting reasons we picked red on one of the first trips to China, it was impressed upon me that red is a symbol of power in China. The boxcar box is actually fairly simple with the white background, but as you move up through our brands, the colors become much more bold and much more vibrant, and all the way to the museum quality box, very high end, almost looks like something for a jewelry box you'd give to your wife.
So right now they're wrapping up the turbine bodies. At this point, we've got a couple of days left before we have to head home. The production manager has assured us that we're going to have those in our hands before we leave on Sunday to head home. They're supposed to drop them at our hotel this Saturday in Hong Kong. We are cutting this right down to the wire. We've got 2 weeks to the show. We've got a bunch of marketing and things that need to be done. And if these things don't show up, we're going to have a real problem. We're hopeful that they're going to make it. They've assured us that they will, but only time's going to tell. thank you.
Wow.
Appreciate all the hard work and appreciate the guys at the factory working the extra hours to get this stuff done. It means a lot.
Fantastic. This will make a beautiful announcement. You should be so proud of what we've all accomplished together.
Our customers are gonna go crazy when they see these. These things are absolutely beautiful.
All right, take care.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
I need a drink.
So we're here at Train Fest and we're finally ready to announce our company. There's so much going on behind the scenes here at the show. So the booth's up, the product's out, and we're finally ready to share what we've been able to accomplish as a team in the last 18 months. All our families here. We had 29 family members come from all over the United States. Well, why don't we go ahead and have James shoot us together and then we'll get the big families as they come in. We had family photos last minute because we're all running around and to see how excited they were. A little motion. Yeah, I've been. It was fantastic. 10 after, one of the things I was worried about is anybody going to show up. At 9:10, when we get ready to do the reveal, what I'd like to ask you guys to do is grab a pole, one of you grab a pole, and then slide the curtain to that pole. If you grab the curtain and you start sliding it and you don't hold the pole, it gets disastrous. I mean, there's a lot of hype, a lot of pre-promotion, and are people gonna come? And so we come out of the curtains and oh my goodness, there's a crowd, and I'm just so thankful. Welcome to Train Fest 2015 for the debut of ScaleTrains.com. Certainly appreciate everyone coming this morning. Have a lot to share with you, and thank you so much to our friends and family. And as the curtains come back, you can just see how excited people are to see the product for the first time.
Right out of the gate, people were just blown away, impressed, and thrilled with what we've done. Our partners in China have done a fabulous job. Some of this stuff's come right to the wire, but at the end of the day, the product that we're showing here just looks nothing short of amazing. The reception from the customers, from other manufacturers in the industry, been absolutely fantastic. We can't be more thrilled than what we are.
And the comments people are making, and the questions, and the booth is so full, you can't even stand in the booth. You're kind of guiding them through, making sure they're seeing, and you're getting them the literature and the brochures, and you're talking, and people are excited. Just took a minute, and I stood out in the aisle across them, and just watching, and watching the team, and I'm so proud.
Shoot, I wish ours looked this good, was my first impressions. And then, Shane showed me the doors working and the detail looking in there. And then there's the vents in those doors. How'd they do that? And I'm just amazed. The whole thing is just a work of art, really.
This has the MU connections. Well, if you go early in time, they don't have MU connections.
Right.
It's game time. It's time to really visit with people. And I love coming to a show and just having that opportunity to talk and listen to what the customers got to say. To be able to see people and their look on their face and the surprise about the detail and the sound and all those things. And then the dash lights come up, and then the headlight comes on, and the number boards and the class lights.
And a couple of people said that the industry needs something like what we're doing, a real shot in the arm for the industry. And so it's exciting, and we really hope that we're not going to let people down as we do that.
From the beginning, we've always wanted to be a premier manufacturer, someone that is respected by modelers and other manufacturers. And for us in the next 5 years, our goal is to earn the respect of the modeler and be that top tier manufacturer. Now, this one is going to make one number or two numbers or something?
There'll be 4 numbers in the museum quality version.
Rivet counter comes in the red box that's sitting down over there.
The exhaust blade in the bead is going to actually operate and spin.
The future's really bright, and we made a lot of good connections here at the show. Folks that have brought us information for new things for us to look at. The old joke is that the quickest way to a small fortune in the model road is to start with a large fortune. And we proved that right in the last 18 months, but I really believe in my heart with the reception that we've got from the customers here at the show, we're on the right track. We're really excited. It's going to be a great year.